Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. They do an incredible job at Purdy Insurance. Making sure you're fully insured and customer service saving you money. It is all at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Mike DeCourcy, one of the best in the business, whether it's Sporting News or BTN, Fox, Bracketology, whatever. Mike, welcome back. So great to hear from you.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing well. I finally got a chance the other night in the Auburn-Tennessee game to really watch Auburn play. I've been traveling a little bit. And so in watching them, they impressed me in a lot of ways. What do you like about Auburn, and do you see any holes in their game?
Yeah, what I like, first of all, is that Johni Broome, who's in his third year after transferring over from Morehead State, is just a magnificent player. And he's worked so hard. When he was at Morehead, I got a chance to see him in the Ohio Valley Championship game. I think they played Murray State that year. So this had been about 3 years ago. And I thought he was a really nice young player, big, strong, great hands, good around the rim. And it makes you a good college player, but it doesn't get you much after college now. The game has changed. You have to be able to play on the entire court. You could be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and maybe if another Kareem came along, you could still be that. But it's harder now to just live in those 6 to 8 feet around the basket. And so Johni has spent the last 3 years developing himself from that player into the one we see now that is effective everywhere on the floor and dominant nearly everywhere on the floor. He's averaging a double-double. He's a great passer with 3 assists a game. He blocks shots. He's nearly at 3 a game. I've seen mock drafts that don't have his name in them, and I just can't imagine that 30 NBA teams would pass up what he could give them.
Right.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. And you have to have at least one of those guys, and I'm not sure. You have to have at least one game-changing NBA guy that the pros value and see it. He's a little older because he's in his 5th year, but I just have to believe that somebody on the upper side of that draft, 20 beyond, that wins games actually, and it doesn't just chase lottery picks every year, has to see what he does and say, I'm taking him. The way the Heat took Jaime Jaquez a few years ago,
right? Yeah.
And so that's what I believe in most. I like their guards. I think that if they are to win it, they will be a little different at that position than pretty much every champion has been, or every recent champion. There is almost always a dominant point guard. Now, they aren't all future NBA guys, but they're always dominant. I mean, you look at various teams over the years. DeJuan Harris from Kansas in 22. Yeah. A guy who played nearly the entire game, ball was in his hands at the start of every possession, always made great decisions. Isn't going to probably play in the NBA, but was a terrific college player, and still is. So you can win it with that guy, but they don't really even have that guy. They share that position. Tahad Pettiford is a very talented young man, and if they said it's all yours, Tahad, I'd say maybe you can do that with him. But they don't do that. He only plays 20 minutes a game. He shares the position with Denver Jones, Miles Kelly. They all have a little piece of it. If you look at their assist numbers, they don't anybody. I mean, Janai actually leads the team in assists.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
They don't have anybody, any guard, averaging more than 2.8 a game. So not even one guy averaging 3. And so that's what I would worry the most about them is usually in those games, like when you get to the the Elite Eight level, if it's a great opponent, and then certainly at the Final Four level, those games are so hard to win. And usually you have to have a guy that you really trust to get you through those moments. And 2023 Connecticut really didn't have that guy for the longest time. And then Tristan Newton kind of took it over in time at the end of the year for them to win that one. And then by his last year, he was a star. Not an All-American, but one of the best ones in his league and certainly good enough to win another national championship.
What is it have you seen in the commitment now in the SEC that's taking them from being good to very good to now being outstanding? When you've talked to people there, what's the commitment been like there now within that conference to create this?
Well, there are some things that I really quarrel with Greg Sankey about when it comes to basketball. His continued push to expand the field, for instance.
Right.
And that always, to me, reflects a tone deafness about, you're not putting 68 teams in the football playoff, and the reason you're not is because there aren't 68 that can win it.
That's right.
Or even have a chance. But he comes with the idea that a couple of years ago, the 31st at-large baseball team or whatever, the last one, it was Ole Miss, I think it was, went out and won it. Oh, well, look, they can do it, so basketball is not the same as baseball either. They're all different. We're not missing anybody that can go far by not having more than 68. So I disagree with him on that. But where I really admire him is that, I guess it's around 8 or 10 years ago now. I don't have the exact timing. They hired Dan Leibovitz to run to be their associate commissioner for basketball. Dan is now with the Big East. Because I think it was a geography thing for Dan. He wanted to live back closer to home, and so he left for the Big East. But he did some really excellent work when he was there. They hired Mike Tranghese, the former Big East commissioner, as a consultant, and he did some outstanding work. And I have to give credit to the people that are in charge now, too. But they built the foundation of what SEC basketball needed to be. Better coaches, more focus on recruiting, more focus on scheduling properly. I thought that this year they took that to the next level with the way they scheduled. And it was it was brilliant. You look at Auburn, Alabama, the two best teams in the league. I mean, they played everybody short of the Knicks, Steve. I mean, they were not. There was no fear. There was complete. We can deal with it, and they both did really well. But I mean, Alabama took some L's, but Auburn didn't take many, and they're both in great shape. They're right now would be a 1 seed on my NCAA tournament bracket. So that's where it began, and then on down the line. I mean, Florida has a great metrics, and they've got a great record, and everybody believes in them as a team, and maybe with good reason, but they haven't beaten hardly anybody, Steve.
I know.
Their record is nothing compared to some of the other teams out there. They played like the 243rd toughest non-league schedule.
Yep.
And I don't have a problem with that if that's what you think you need to build your team. But I think it ought to be reflected a little bit more in where you eventually wind up. And the league might do enough for them if they do well enough to compensate for some of that. But their league schedule's easier than everybody else's too. A week ago, someone asked me about this when I was on FS1. about the SEC and how many teams they'd get and how high they'd be seeded. And I looked at everybody like in the top 5 at that point: Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, and the 2 Alabama schools. And how many of the games did they have against one another? And Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee all had 5.
Right.
Kentucky had 4. Florida only had 3. So like they're playing the municipal course while everybody else is playing Augusta National.
Exactly.
Tough municipal course, but still.
Yeah. No, exactly. Watched Houston, Kansas the other night. It was a great win for Houston, especially the way it played out. Defensively, you've seen a lot of really good defensive teams out there, and I thought Houston last year was a great defensive team. How good defensively is this Houston team, and do they have enough offense?
Well, that's the issue for them. It's been the issue lately for Houston. Last year, they probably didn't have enough, but then when their star point guard was injured in the Sweet 16, they definitely didn't have enough. And that's probably been the problem for them ever since they made the Final Four in 2021, that they have among the best defensive teams. But is their offense good enough? And from an efficiency standpoint, the numbers say it is. But I guess the question is, like, to do what? Is it good enough to win it? I don't think so.
Right.
I just, I look at it and see deficiencies that probably keep you from winning it because I don't see the creativity at the same level for them. I mean, there's a reason why they're 299th in assist rate. I mean, they don't pass the basketball and create opportunities well. What they do is they drive it down your throat, they get it on the rim, and they are going to get more than their fair share of those. I mean, they're 11th in the country in offensive rebound percentage. It's what they have to be because they don't have a Jamal Shed now.
Right.
They have good players, but they don't have super creativity there.
Yeah, I mean, no question. Big Ten. Michigan State's number 1. Got a chance to see him in person 2 weeks ago. What has made them a really good, solid team without really a star player?
What it is, I think, is the number one quality that has made them great is the willingness to buy in to what Izzo wants to do and to what this team needs to do to be exceptional. Because what it means for nearly everybody is you don't play a lot. I mean, not like the places where they have a 6 or 7 man rotation, and if you're one of the better players, you're getting 28 to 32 minutes a game. They're very good players, very good basketball players are getting 18 to 20. And that's unusual in today's basketball because, first off, it's hard to get 10 good players that can help you win. And secondly, it's hard to get 10 players who are willing to do that.
Yeah.
And so usually you have to trim it down because you may want to play a guy 16 to 18 minutes, but he's not buying it, so you don't play him much at all. That's and maybe he transfers at the semester break. That happens now. So that their willingness to buy into that has been phenomenal. And there's also been the fact that Tom has been willing to look at this and not say, and I think he got caught up, maybe it's a reaction to what happened a year ago, when he got caught up into saying, okay, these are my guys, these are the guys I'm riding with. And whatever happens out there, this is how we're riding. Because these other guys, they're not ready yet. That's how he dealt with Xavier Booker, for instance, a year ago. While Chris Cooper wasn't playing that well. They weren't getting much out of either of their regular bigs, and he didn't play Xavier Booker much until the end of the year. Now, it's more like if one of the big guys isn't playing well or one of the guards isn't playing well, I got 2 other guys that can do that job. So it'll be their night. And the guys have been pretty adaptable to that. And so they're most always playing with somebody who's having a good night because they'll suppress the minutes of the guys who maybe aren't on it and elevate the minutes of the guys who are.
Anybody else in the Big Ten that you look at and say, you know what, they can go some distance in the NCAA tournament? When you look at them, they may have some distance. In other words, they can somehow get out of the first weekend. Who would that be?
Oh, I think that both Maryland and Illinois, obviously Purdue, they're going to be a threat. They're going to be matchup dependent. They have what they need to do well, but it's going to be very matchup dependent. There are certain teams that defend the post well, for instance. You don't want to face any of those. You want to face teams that are relatively lean on the interior, and preferably if they're both tall and not lean, then you really want to play them if you're Purdue. But Illinois and Maryland both have really talented players, and Illinois' guys are a little bit more erratic from game to game. They're either absolutely astonishing or how did that happen kind of games for them. And for Maryland, it's more a function of not being 40-ish. I always say nobody's ever good for 40 minutes.
Right.
But how long are your bad stretches? And Maryland's tend to be longer and or more poorly timed than some others. I think lately they've improved on that. They did have a bad stretch, poorly timed, against Indiana on Sunday, but then took advantage of some poor decisions by Indiana and their own ingenuity and competitiveness, and the Terps were able to get home with a really nice road win.
Yeah, look, athletically, Illinois has incredible athletes out there. And I see Maryland now, I've watched the last couple of games, really impressed. What do you think the West Coast teams have added and not added to the conference at this point?
Well, I think they've been very compelling, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think, first of all,
I do too.
I've been to 3 of the 4 venues out there, and I love every one of them. Really love, for various different reasons. Pauley, all the history, and I've always said, if my version of heaven would be the area outside Pauley on a January Saturday. I could stand there for eternity because the weather is perfect and everybody's excited about basketball, and that would be pretty ideal place to be. It's a great place to be to watch a game. And then the Galen Center is perfect size. Everybody has a good seat. I've only been there when they were, when the games were good, like Arizona and UCLA and people like that. So they were really engaged, and so I really like that. And I love what they call Alaska Airlines Arena now up at Washington.
Yeah,
it's a great old building. It's got all the charm and the spirit of something that's been around forever, like Cameron or Allen Fieldhouse or something like that, or the Barn up at Minnesota. Theirs is one of the great buildings, and maybe one of the underrated great buildings. It's a phenomenal place. So they've added 3 of the best venues in college basketball. I have not ever been to the arena at Oregon. I was in the old one, the one that always felt like it was about to fall down. I was at MacArthur Court. I was there, not for a game, but for a practice.
Yeah.
But I've never been to the new one.
Right.
But I think they've all added that charm and that spirit. I think that they've added 2 outstanding basketball teams in Oregon and UCLA that'll probably make the NCAAs. USC has shown that they will compete.
Yes.
They just don't have enough skill.
Yeah.
But they have some really competitive guys, and when they go on the road, they don't give up. Their road win against Illinois will be one of the best in the Big Ten, and honestly one of the best in the country for a team that probably doesn't make the show.
Right. And I agree with that. And saw them play at Nebraska. Now Nebraska's is struggling along, but I thought USC played great in that game too. In watching that game.
Right.
What will you look for here in the month of February? Anything that that normally you try to keep an eye on that's a standard for you to give you at least some clues about March?
Yeah, I think honestly, Steve, usually in January, what happens is there are a bunch of upsets. usually reflected by how people look at the polls, and people say, well, we've never had this before, and it's the most amazing season. And I'm like, no, we do this every year. Every year we look through January and teams get upset. And then February is where the great teams start to separate themselves. That's when the teams that are really special start to really show how great they are. If you see a significant upset, it's usually a January when the better team, the legitimately great team, looked at the calendar and said, man, it's still 2 months till March. That sort of thing. And that doesn't happen in February because they know March is right there. It's on the doorstep. And so not that there are never any upsets, but I think you'll start to see like who's really special. Michigan, and also some of it is because of the way games are scheduled.
Yes.
That a lot of the best games are placed into February. The ones that should be the best are placed into February because we've got one football game left on the entire calendar.
Right.
We've got the Super Bowl, and that's it. The AFC and NFC championship games are done. The college football playoffs over. So the networks working with the league say, okay, give us a couple of Purdue, Michigan States. Give us your Duke, Carolina, which we'll get the first edition of on Saturday. Those games start to pop up, and that's when you see, like if Duke beats Carolina's not great. I saw them on Tuesday,
Right.
But they'll bring their best effort. And so if Duke takes them down, that'll be a statement. And those are the kinds of things that you see through February. How good is Michigan State? Well, they're on a heck of a run, and I like their team a lot. But they're about to face challenges that they haven't faced since November as they go through the tougher part of the Big Ten. And that's what we'll see all through the month and all through the sport.
Always a pleasure. Love getting your perspective as always, Mike. Thanks so much for your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Steve. Thank you.
That is the great Mike DeCourcy. God, Mike and I go back a long time, and my respect for him just grows every year. One of the best. We'll come back more in a moment as we continue on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
Game time or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
When car repairs get difficult.
Well, I just don't know.
Me neither.
We get good. Sunbury Motors. More than quality new and used cars, Sunbury Motors specializes in complicated auto repair diagnosis. They can handle intricate repairs and even complete auto body with service open Monday through Friday, 7 till 4. And Sunbury Motors has made simple repairs easy. Maintaining your vehicle is necessary. Finding the time to do it is difficult. Welcome to Sunbury Motors Quick Lane. Just walk in or call ahead. Relax in their remodeled waiting room with Wi-Fi, beverages, and snacks. While Sunbury Motors factory-trained techs take care of your oil change, tire alignments, brakes, and inspections. Quick Lane, 6:30 to 6 Monday through Friday, Saturday 6:30 till 2. Sunbury Motors, Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We take the out of auto repair.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf online, sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best new inventory, all with great warranties. Valentine's Day's coming up. Why not go for a vehicle? Pre-owned inventory, they go over each one with a fine-tooth comb. It eases the buying experience. And terrific service department. Quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult. They handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Yeah, we'll talk about the money from time to time, and this part's not a joke when I say this. It always drove the suit nuts when we talked about the money, because it always, and he always said, and I understand why he's saying this, that it always, every time we talked about the money, it took away from the charm of sports. And I completely understand that. You know? I completely understand that. But in the end, this is a business. It's what it's all about. You know, the money explains why ticket prices are where they are. The money explains why you're able to do or not do certain things based on your financials. And, I mean, it's a business. You're going to have to come up with $20.5 million because that's what the law says you have to do. That's what the House agreement means. A judge says that's what you have to do. So you have to come up with it. Well, how do you come up with it? Where do you stand going into it? We've talked about Ohio State's financials, $3.7 million in the hole. We talked about UCLA's financials, about $52 million in the hole. We talked about Rutgers, $70.3 million in the hole. Iowa's up $2.8 million. And Penn State, for example, $5.6 million. Okay. So that's where, and that's why we talk about it. You know, we talked about the ACC contract. Okay, so what is creating a separation between ACC Big 12 schools and the SEC and the Big 10? Right? In the end, it's going to be money that's going to create that gap. That's why we talk about it. It creates the gap. And it then ends up being a separation between schools, a separation between conferences. Now, it's going to start showing up more and more, in my opinion, within the next 2 years. And you have to ask yourself, if you are a university that has to pay out in the House settlement, can you afford the $20.5 million? See, I think that's a big one here. Can you afford the $20.5 million?
I think I've said this before, but I think people are going to be surprised about how many schools can't afford the full $20 million.
No, I don't. There's There's going to be a lot of schools that I don't think can do it. And you can fundraise all 24 hours every single day, and I don't think you can get to it. And if you can't get to it, can you then compete for top talent? And that I don't know. Because most of it, look, again, remember what I told you about the Biden administration guidance at the end of his term about the 50-50 split in Title IX. Schools are going to take that as guidance and not as a mandate. They're going to do it. I think, it'll get challenged in court. You and I both know that. I mean, there'll be a court challenge somewhere. But, I mean, you're sitting there and you are, I brought up Georgia Tech, for example. Can Georgia Tech come up with $20.5 million to compete with any Big Ten school?
Maybe once, but I don't think on a year-to-year basis, no.
No, I don't think so either. Now, to be fair to Georgia Tech, I'm not going to sit there and know what their alumni base is. I mean, I know it's a great school, great academic school. The question is, I don't know what they do in fundraising for athletics. That part I don't know. I'd only be guessing, and anything I said about it would be disingenuous and would completely uninform the audience. So, I mean, that's the part. I don't know. Penn State's going to go back to Rec Hall tonight. Lady Lions played Maryland last night. And tonight, Penn State and Ohio State. Ohio State's 12-8. And look, Thornton, the point guard, I've liked since the first game I saw him 2 years ago. I thought, man, this guy's a good player. He may not be an NBA player, but he is a good player. He's the engine. They've added in a couple of guys that can really shoot. Parrish can really shoot. Devin Royal's having a better year this year. A couple of big guys that they've added in, including Bradshaw from Kentucky. Now, he's coming off the bench now. But what's interesting about Rec Hall in playing there is the sideline across from mine. That's the one of the biggest differences in Rec Hall compared to other places. That sideline opposite where I broadcast from, now it used to be below me, but now since they've redone Rec Hall, we've moved to the opposite side. They're right on the court. They are right on the court. Now, the rest of it, I mean, the sideline, because a basketball court is wider than a wrestling mat and wider than a volleyball court, you have to push the stands back below where I am. You can't bring them all the way out. Okay. And the end zone, as I've said once, I've said 100 times, the end zones are a joke at Rec Hall. It's like, really? They should be right on top of the court. I mean, but they aren't. But that one sideline, all the way across, they are right there. You don't think they influence the game? Absolutely. They have an influence on the game. And that's pretty cool, because most of the new arenas aren't like that. Yeah, I mean, Mackey Arena is great, but it doesn't mean the fans at Mackey Arena are right on top of the floor. They really aren't. In the end zones, they are, but they're elevated. Okay. Breslin Center is pretty terrific. They're almost all right up on the court, except when you get to the benches, they're behind the benches. But most of the new arenas are built in such a way where there's spacing. Like Nebraska, sold out, beautiful arena, really nice. But the fans are not really that close to the court. I mean, there's I don't care whether it's the baselines or the sideline. They're kind of like back a little bit. So Rec Hall, that one sideline is right on top of the court. It's pretty cool.
I watched Vanderbilt for the first time in a while this weekend, and I forgot how strange that court was, with the benches underneath the basket and like a raised stage.
Yep, it's different. And I've done a game of Vanderbilt, and it is an interesting experience, especially with the benches on the end. It's, it's different, to their credit, and they've never changed it. I think in looking at, if I remember the layout off the top of my head, I kind of felt that it was difficult to put them on the sideline, I think.
Yeah, and it's weird to see the student section, the first row of the student section. You always kind of see from the chest up.
Yeah. All right.
Speaking of that,
exactly.
Did you see how much money Vanderbilt's been fined this year for storming the court and taking the goalpost down?
No.
So it was $250 the first time, and then they stormed the court earlier this season, so that was $300, and now storming the court Saturday got them a $500,000 fine. They owe $850,000 in fines.
Ew.
I think they might get better security for storming the court.
Well, that's why. Remember, we talked about this last week, and we're saying the athletic director was out. Please don't storm the court, because that poor guy's standing there, like looking around, going, "Hey, look, we can't keep throwing money out the window here." I don't blame him.
Yeah, especially when you get to that amount.
Yeah, that's big, big.
Well, their idea on Saturday to start the court storming was to stand like 15 people in front of 2,000 students, and that did not go well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's no. I mean, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Hey, good news. No. Wow. Okay. But that's tonight, 6:30. We're on beginning at 6. The one thing about playing over in Rec Hall that's hard is the parking deal. Yeah. All you wrestling fans out there, I got to give you credit. All those times you parked, I got to give you all the credit in the world for doing that. All the credit in the world.
Did I ever share my Rec Hall parking story?
No.
So this is a long, long time ago. It was to see Glenn Robinson. It was like the first game I ever covered at Penn State, and they sent me out to Rec Hall. I parked right behind the building. There were small parking spots, and somebody pulled in and parked right on top of me, and I got annoyed. I get out. I look at the car. It has an Illinois plate, and I was like, "Who is this?" And you know who got out of the car? Joe.
Oh.
I was like, "All right, you can do whatever you want, sir." But he had parked over the line, and I had to squeeze out of my car.
Yeah.
I figured he can get away with that.
Yeah, probably could. And Penn State won that night, by the way.
I almost saw the most spectacular dunk of my life. Because I think Quanzo Martin missed the shot, and Glenn Robinson tried to hang on the rim and reach back and dunk the putback and missed it. But never forget the miss.
Yeah, remarkable. Robinson's a great player.
Mm-hmm.
And Quanzo was a good player. Quanzo was a good player.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, good player. Yeah, a lot of great memories in Rec Hall. And, being in there yesterday for practice, I was like, okay. It's like it kind of brought it back a little bit, being in there. And it's a game they need tonight. I mean, it's the start of the second half. We all know about the close losses, closing, questions, things like that. I got it. Believe me, I completely understand. But it's a game they need to get. You need to start the second half. It's a home game. Need to win a home game. So there's a lot of things that are going into this game tonight against a good team. I mean, Ohio State's good. They hit a little bit of a slump. They're playing a little bit better. The win at Purdue was big. And then came back and they beat Iowa with relative ease at home, which was great. So we'll see how it plays out tonight. I mean, again, it's a game that Penn State needs. There's no getting around it. And so you have to go out and play all 40 minutes with that sense of urgency. And they've got to be a little, and they're going to hit. They'll hit a couple of deep threes on you because they got a couple of guys that can really shoot. And they'll hit a couple of deep threes. And Mobley can hit deep threes. Thornton can do whatever he wants, seems whatever he wants. And Parrish, those three guys can hit deep threes. Well, it doesn't mean they're going to hit all of them. And you can't get all caught up in it if they hit one. They hit one, they hit one. You go to the next play. So don't panic about it. Just make sure you're out on them. And if they happen to hit a 25 to 27 footer, so be it. Guess what? Your percentage of hitting 25 to 27 footers are very, very low. Doesn't mean you can't hit one or two, but the percentage is very low. And we'll see how this whole thing plays out tonight. I'm looking forward to it. And Dick and I are going to drive over together because we figured instead of having two of us park, we could leave a space open for somebody else, like in your case you attempted to do.
Yes.
All right, we'll wrap it up in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.